Happy Friday. It's the long weekend. I'm super excited. One man that, I used to mess with when I was back in university messaged me and was like, I think you should come to Houston this weekend. For what? For what, sir? No. I don't be doing these moves anymore. I'm 30 years old. Like, not even that I'm too old to like be doing those moves, but like I'm too old to just like be randomly popping into cities to go and like do stuff with men. Like, what do you mean? That was like when I was in university, okay? I'm a big girl now. Put some respect on my name, okay? And if I wanted to even imagine like the logistics of me having to drive myself 2.5 hours just to go and like just to go and like bless a man with my presence and then drive back on Monday. Oh, because you're buying what? You're buying KFC. Because you're doing what? Taking me out and buying bottles. Like, nah, let's not. Before I completely change topic, and I know that this is kind of just that you guys like, but before I completely change topic, let me get back on track for today. So today's conversation is a little bit like, I don't know, it's like an intro to a bigger type of conversation, right? Whenever I went to Dallas, I think 2 weeks ago, me and a friend, we had been talking because we saw this lady. I need to put this here. Me and a friend, we had been talking because we saw this lady on Instagram. I think it was Instagram that was going through like a depressive episode, and so she wasn't cleaning her room, and it had piled up to a point where it was very, very serious, and like the room was like proper messy, like it was very bad. And she was like, oh, she just cannot imagine how people like let it get this bad. And I was like, yeah, like it happens. You'd be very surprised, peeping your head out, you'd be very surprised at how like people like you'd be very shocked. And my question to her was, look at me, look at how organized I am right now, look at how good I am with adulting right now. Will you ever believe that I would get to a point like this where like I wouldn't clean my room and I wouldn't just like, because I'm very high functioning. And when I say high functioning, like I'm always picking up stuff in my house. My house is always clean. Excuse me. I go to gym like, very often. I'm very good with like my day to day. Like my friends say that I adult properly. Apparently, I adult very properly. And I was like, look at someone like me. Would you think that I would let myself get so depressed, or I would be in such a position where I'm not cleaning my house and my house? Like, you've been to my house. Me telling my friend, like, you've been to my house. And she's like, no. And I was like, yeah. Well, this used to be me a couple years ago. And she was like, wait, what? You used to be depressed and have anxiety? Because outside of me even being high functioning, I'm very, very bubbly when I come outside to meet people. I think we've talked about this before, that because I have like social anxiety, whenever I decide to go out, I mentally prepare myself. Like, he has to take me like a whole day to like mentally prepare myself to come out to relate to people. And so on the surface I'm like very happy, but back when I get back home I need to like fully recharge, and I'm like exhausted. I'm like mentally exhausted. So both depression and anxiety. And I think that one of the things that I really just want to focus on today, even before delving into what I did or if I'm in a better place right now, is just like the genesis of it all, I think. And one of the things that I really thought about that contributed or affected me personally, as far as like my depression and anxiety, that I didn't even know that it was called then, is because when I was growing up, there was not a lot of representation of depression and anxiety in the things that I saw in my day to day, right? I personally grew up on Nigerian movies. I grew up on Hollywood. I grew up on Yoruba movies. I was watching a movie every single day because again, I was home from school and you were bored. I used to go to my mom's shop, but also to pass time, it was always movies or music, and there was no representation of what depression and anxiety was. And so when I remember, I think the first memory of me being anxious that I fully remember, depressed and anxious, was whenever I was trying to get into Covenant University. No, whenever I was trying to get into high school, my parents had wanted me and my sister to go to Queen's College, and we didn't get in. And then they wanted us to go to Federal Government College, and we didn't get in also. And I was just so sad about it. Like, I was very, very sad about it. And my mom had just had a baby, my younger brother, my sweet younger brother, and I wasn't happy. Like, I wasn't happy. I was just very, like, always wanting to be in my room, always not wanting to socialize, always like, just really sad. And I'm like, I don't understand why I feel this way. I feel so different from everyone. This should be something that I'm wanting to celebrate. This is a newborn baby, right? My mom is happy, my parents are happy. Why am I feeling so sad about it? And then I went to high school. I really can't remember in high school. I feel like a lot of my interactions in high school, I had depression and anxiety, but I can't really remember. I know I've told you guys about like back then when I had those friends and me and them fell out, and I think I had like a severe anxiety at that time. But again, it wasn't really as pronounced as when I was trying to get into Covenant and I was at home for as long as I was, and every day wake up with like a panic attack. Every day I was waking up with a panic attack in my chest, and I was just so depressed, and just so anxious. Like, okay, is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? I didn't have a represent, like, I couldn't tell what this was and why was it happening. Also because when you talk about mental health, as far as like the environment that I grew up in, with the things that I grew up with, namely like the movies, the representation of mental health issues was madness. Like, someone's mad. And the representation of the madness was caused by you being an evil person. And so, or either you being an evil person, or like as a punishment for you being an evil person, or as a way that someone is trying to punish you or get to you. And again, it was like, you're crazy. I don't even think that depression and anxiety was prioritized or discussed. It was, mental health was mostly mental, like, you're mad, and it was as a form of punishment. And that's what I saw. And so it was difficult for me to express myself or open up about the fact that I was depressed. Not a lot of people also was talking about it. You're expected at that age when you're going to uni, and it's like you're now in school and you should be happy that you're here with a lot of your peers. You're expected to just like socialize and just, and it was very unfortunate for me, particularly because outwardly I had this very, very bubbly personality. So I was expected to always be happy. I think it got really, really worse. Progressively, like I said, I'm seeing like, okay, there's this pattern of me being unhappy. I think through my 20s, from like 20 to like age, I would say 28, was very, very, very bad. It was, oh my God, it was so bad that at some point I will actually want to like just like unalive myself, because I'm like, this is too much. I think one of it was like the pressure of what is coming. What am I going to do with my life? At the time, I had gotten my bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering, and I liked it, but at the same time, I didn't really like it. And I was just like, okay, what am I going to do with my life? What does my career progression look like? And then at the same time, because whenever we were younger, the timeline that we've given ourselves for getting married and settling down is between the ages of 20 to 28. You're beginning to have this pressure like, oh my God, wait, I'm not talking to any man now. Am I failing? Because again, the representation of what we saw in movies, I saw in movies growing up, was that if you're not married at a particular age, then your biological clock is ticking, and you're failed. You've that, like, you haven't done anything with your life, and it's again a punishment. It's maybe you're evil and nobody wants to be with you. You can't find love because you're like this evil person, and you don't deserve to be with anybody. That's the representation of what I saw growing up in movies. And so it feels to me, between those ages of 20 to 30, you're having those emotions where, like, I was very depressed, especially when I, was at that age. I was very depressed. And then to make matters worse for me, I moved to the US when I was, I think, 21, when I just finished my undergrad, right? And I know getting admission alone was very, very stressful, but also the uncertainty of when I was initially doing like the whole process of moving, I was like, wait, what does this mean long term for me? Am I going to go back to Nigeria? Am I going to get my master's degree and go back and work for Nigeria? That was always the plan. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to go back to Nigeria and work as an expatriate for an oil and gas company, and I'm going to be reunited with my friends again. There was also the thoughts of, oh my God, I'm going to miss a lot of milestone that's going to be happening in the house. Like those little tiny things that we had with our friends and our nuclear family. I'm going to miss those things because I'm abroad. So for instance, my mom had this tradition of everyone's birthday, my mom would buy cake from Spa back in Lagos. She would cook like jollof rice or fried rice and pepper soup, and we'll all gather downstairs in our living room and just sing happy birthday to them and just have like a really cheeky small family get together. And this was one of those things that I will then be missing out on because I wanted to leave Nigeria to go pursue my master's degree, right? But it was like, okay, we'll be for 2 years, you'll be back. Because my sister went to the UK and she, planned to come back to Nigeria. So the plan was always, okay, you go do your master's, you meet people, network, and then you come back home. But still the idea of having to miss those tiny things that sparked joy in my life was a little bit much. Just being able to like drive down to see my grandma, like I loved spending time with my grandma and my cousins in Ibadan, and missing those things would be like, okay, I was already getting depressed thinking about me moving away from home and missing my younger one's growth, missing like, when you have like juniors in school, right? And they graduate and you go back to school and you just see everyone again and it's such a happy memory. I was like, okay, now I'm going to miss because when I was in 500 level, then my next set, 400 level, I'm going to miss their graduation. I'm going to miss my sister's graduation. Things like that was very, very depressing for me particularly. And then when I moved to America, you're now in a completely new environment with new people who had already formed their own cliques, people who probably had already known themselves before now, and you have to find a way to just like weasel your way into that community and be friends with people. You're getting to know people afresh because people have different thought processes, people have different backgrounds, people have different religion. Personalities are very different. Having to acclimatize, oh my God. The weather is also very different. So you're having to adjust to like the weather, the timing, coming to America. So that first year was also very, very hard on me. Luckily for me, I moved to Houston from Nigeria. So it wasn't as hard because there was like a Nigerian community. But it even follows what I'm saying, because I remember when I moved to Houston and I lived in my auntie's house for like the first year. No, not the first year, I take that back. For the first week when I was there, and me and her daughter had gone out for like we invited one of my friends I'd met on Twitter, and so we went out for like this bowling thing, and my cousin and her friends were being very condescending to my friend and just speaking down on us because we're Nigerians they grew up in America, but we're Nigerians who grew up in Nigeria, and they were I don't know, maybe just looking down on us. And that really bothered me because I was just like, what do you even mean? Like, what? First of all, you're my cousin, but secondly, what do you even mean? Like, there shouldn't be a segregation, or there shouldn't be a form of differentiation between me because I lived back in Nigeria and you, who you're Nigerian still. You moved here when you were like maybe 8, 9. That doesn't change. Like, if someone was looking at both of us, if we called our names out for both of us, we're both Nigerians. So why will you even be looking down on us, especially to your friends who are not Nigerians, who are African Americans? So that. And then realizing that would probably be like a lot of my interactions until I made my own friends was, very depressing for me. And then through your master's, your system of education is very different from the Nigerian system of education. The timing of classes was like 6 p.m. I'd never gone to a 6 p.m. class before. And then you have to work during the day. And then at night, you have to go to class. And then you had assignments. And, it was just a lot. It was just a lot. And as time went on, it just felt like this worries was like getting increasingly, serious. And to make matters worse, this was at a time when like trauma was still like a lot of the interactions or the things that you see from people was also backed up by the trauma that they were going through from their different backgrounds, and people were beginning to now step out of their family shadows and be individual people without the backing, without having to rely, not rely, but without foreshadowing or like what's the word, without using your parents as an excuse. You're now becoming an adult by yourself. You're now getting to the point where like you have to take accountability and responsibility for every single one of your action without, you can't blame because you're not home now. You can't blame your parents, but also they're not there to necessarily like bail you out. Like I'm not in Nigeria where like my mom or my dad can bail me out of things. I'm by myself, right? I have this apartment by myself. I have my room to myself in a place without my siblings. So if I cook food and it's not delicious or my room is messy, it's me. Like I can't really blame anybody. There's no house help to help you do this. Like like you're beginning to form. You're beginning to pick up like you're beginning to see your own bad characters and your flaws even much more clearly than ever because you're now by yourself. And I think for me, it was just a lot to adjust to because you also don't want to accept some things about yourself. Like, I didn't want to accept that I was messy. I didn't want to accept that I'm like this messy person. I'm no longer messy, excuse me. But I didn't want to accept that. What do you mean I'm like messy? And so my mom was right the whole time that I'm actually messy. Wow. My mom was right that I don't be knowing how to cook. My mom was right that I'm lazy. So she was right that I'm very lazy. And just coming to terms with like yourself, because you're in these formative years of like 20 to 30 it contributed to a lot of my depressive and anxious episodes as well. So I will say that. But generally, I think, I wanted to focus this episode on just talking about the things that I feel like contributed to my depression and anxiety. Also, I have to say that before I, lose track of what I'm saying, I need to just say that the bigger part of it that we don't even consider is that it's a medical condition for some people. For me, personally, let me speak for myself. It's a medical condition. So even if it's triggered by my environment and the things that's happening to me, at the core of it, there is just an imbalance in people's brains that makes them more depressed or happier than the other person. It's not because they're mental. It's not because they're doing it to themselves. It's like a headache. Right? Some people, you hear that some people have like migraines every single day of their life and they have to take drugs. You hear that some people are allergic to water. You hear that some people have cramps. I've never had cramps a day in my life, okay? But my challenge is mental health. I've been laughing and saying that, you know what? God took away my cramps and gave me depression and anxiety. So it's like people have different, like, as human beings, we're all built very differently. And I want us to understand that depression and anxiety or mental health issues is just like anything else. It's not self-caused. Well, sometimes it could be not preventable, but like maybe you could do things to like help you out. And I'll talk about the things that I've been doing to help me out in the next episode. But also, it's just an imbalance, chemical imbalance in your brain. And there's just so much that you could do to like a medical condition. So the first thing for me is having that understanding that it doesn't have it's not a reflection of me. It's not a reflection of the things that I've done. It's not a reflection of if I'm a good person or a bad person. It's not because I'm wicked. It's not because God is trying to punish me. It's just the way that when I was in the factory from God, that was just how my brain was programmed. And unfortunately, I was, sent down to earth with depression and much more anxiety than the next person. And I think that, honestly, that would be the first thing at the core of it, is just having the understanding. And as friends, as family members, as it's like accepting, and I know that there are a lot of things that as human beings we're becoming more, exposed to and coming around to, but it's like accepting. One of the other things that I recently accepted, not recently but like years back, is sexuality, and the fact that, because that's another thing that contributes to like depression and anxiety. And this is not a coming out video, please, but whenever I accepted the fact that we're all born with different sexuality, and me liking to have relations with girls does not make me a bad person. It does not mean that there's something wrong with my brain. It does not mean that it's just how I literally was created. But again, this is not my coming out video. I'm very much into both girls and boys. Um, but it's like one of those things where like you have to like reprogram yourself that some things are just how we were created. Some things are just the way that the way it's like if you were in a factory, for instance, and you're making passion fruit juice, right? There is bound to be, all of them are going to be, they can have like the same composition, but there are going to be like differences. There's going to be like differences, and maybe this passion fruit juice isn't even the best type of example, but like you can't just make one, a million, 2 million. Think about how many of us are in the world. 500 million of us, and we're exactly the same thing, with the same brain, with the same what program. It's not even going to be interesting for God. What do you mean? It's not going to be interesting for God. It's not going to be interesting for us. So you have to spice things up a little bit, and then give people like a dash of like, lesbianism. Give this one like a dash of like depression and anxiety. And you start accepting yourself, when you start accepting yourself, accepting your flaws, I think that that's when I started like looking deeper into like my depression and anxiety. Like, okay, what else is causing me to be depressed and anxious outside of like the medical aspect of it? So we're talking marriage pressure that I put on myself, by the way. Now, again, now it's no longer, I don't really care that much. I want to get married, but like it's not that deep, okay? Academic pressure, am I going to graduate with a good degree? And then when I graduate with this good degree, my friends are going to be making money. Am I going to make money too? Am I going to make my parents proud? And then there's that thing where like Nigerian parents have conditioned us to be very competitive from when we were younger, because they've been comparing us with like their friends' kids that went to this place and they smashed their masters. Did you even know that this person's kid, they went to this place for masters and they had the best result, and now they work in oil and gas industry and they do this? That competitiveness that they have put in our brains because they compared us to like their friends' kids. That was another thing for me. One of the things I hated the most in my life when my parents did was to compare me to anybody else, because I'm like, what do you actually mean? We don't know these people in depth. You don't know if their parents are like garnishing like their image. You don't know how, like, you don't know if they have like why would you even be comparing me to someone else? Like, that used to piss me off so bad, and it used to contribute to like me being sad, because I don't even want you to compare me to my siblings, okay? Because it feels like you're telling me that you don't love me. If you compare me to anybody, you're telling me that you don't love me. So you're telling me that you don't even, not love, but you don't even like me and you don't rate me, because then you don't fully believe in me as an individual to be able to have my own characteristics or flaws or personality without then comparing someone else. My achievement is not someone else's achievement. Their achievement is not my achievement. We didn't grow up the same way, so how are we expected? Like, even I saw a video recently that 2 kids in a house didn't get the same treatment from their parents. So if you're knowing this, why would you now compare me to like another child in another house entirely, that we don't know the type of love that their parents gave them, we don't know the type of upbringing, we don't know the type of words that was spoken into them? So that used to piss me off. That was another thing that contributed to my anxiety and depression. It's like, don't compare me to anyone, because I don't want to be in a competition. Even as an adult now, at my 30s, I'm not in a competition with anybody at all. The only person I want to be better than is myself. Like, the me of yesterday, I want to be better than the me of yesterday. And so these were things that like contributed to my anxiety and depression, if I'm being honest. Anyways, I want to always keep this video short. just so I'm not like losing you guys, I'm like, okay, I'm targeting like 20-25 minutes. So I think we're already at like 20-23 minutes mark. So next week I'm going to talk about like more, I'm going to talk more on like just the point, at the exact point where I decided to go to therapy and what I did since then to improve like my mental health, talking to people about it, seeing a psychiatrist, because I did see a psychiatrist. It's funny, but like 3 years ago, I did see a psychiatrist and had like an evaluation done because we also want to be careful about diagnosing ourselves. So I'm, diagnosed. It's funny, but like I'm very well diagnosed. And I will just talk more about those things in the next video. This went by super fast. I'm super excited. I'm excited for next week. Thank you for watching. Please like hearing feedback and like questions or like suggestions. What do you want me to talk about? I'm very open to them. And as always, thank you so much for listening today. It's going to be a long weekend, so I hope you have a great time. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week, Friday. Bye.